mic. Yeah. Hello. 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 Yes. Hello. Hello. Is it still not showing the frequency? Hello. Hello. It's okay. Hello. Yeah. Hello. Okay. Okay. So in this morning session on the second day of the presentations, we will have presentations by these students. Let me read the names again. Shivani will start today, and she will make presentation on the invisible panopticon, from Orwellian surveillance to digital self-censorship. Sejad's will be on archive, memory, and historical power, reconstructing the past in George Orwell's 1984, and Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World. Sandeep's will be on the power of language, newspeak, and thought control. Rudra's presentation will be on modernist ideology and political commitment in W.H. Auden's late 1930s poetry. Riddhi's will be on memory and moral responsibility in An Artist of the Floating World. That is the title, so you have to either keep in single inverted comma or in italicized format. I hope this instruction I won't have to repeat again. So how to put the title in the title. When the text title is given in the title of presentation, how you have to do that. Nancy will be on the panopticon and the proletariat, a Marxist Foucauldian analysis of power in 1984. Milan will be on silence, gaps, and the unsaid, reading absence in An Artist of the Floating World. Khushi's presentation on Hindu philosophy and the concept of waiting in Waiting for Godot. Jansi on language engineering, newspeak as a model for political linguistics. Jaipal will make it on, I think there is an issue of internet. There's an internet issue here. In that system, it is okay. Laptop. The voice is here. It is broken. Yeah. Okay. Here there is a network problem. Let me check. Yeah, okay. So we were reading the topics of today's presenters. Jaipal will be making it on the frozen city and the silent voice. Auden's 1939 alleges. 1939 alleges there is some problem with the topic as a laboratory of modernism. You need to recorrect this title. Okay? Hiral will make it on a dystopian power structures and the politics of control in 1984, and Leila. Divya will make it on From Fate to Absurdity, a comparative study of Oedipus, Hamlet, and Waiting for Godot. Dimple Parmar will make it on Selfhood, Language, Doublethink, and Ideological Control in George Orwell's 1984, Exploring Identity, Reality, and Dystopian Politics. Dimple Dabi will make it on Truth and the Manipulation of Language in 1984. Chetna's will be on Recursive Status and the Algorithmic Absurd a post-structuralist analysis of linguistic entropy and digital loops in Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Bhargavi will make it on narrative power, media propaganda, memory reconstruction, and artistic responsibility in Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World. And the final presentation will be by Aditya Raj on waiting and resisting existential crisis and the search for meaning in Beckett's Waiting for Godot and Ionesco's Rhinoceros. Okay. So let us start with the first presentation. Yes. Adjust this camera.
स्क्रीन शेयर करवाएं.
Okay, yesterday in the afternoon, we suggested this that we told you to use Canva to prepare the banner. That's why we had one session also in workshop where you learn how to use Canva. So the banner is like that. Banner you might have seen, seminar we have done and how the banners were prepared. So in that format, you have to prepare the banner. What is your topic? Who is the speaker? What is the event? So minutely study what is banner first, what comes in banner, and then use Canva, and then use download the image and put image on the first page. So you all get practice of working on Canva also and how to use editing tools like Canva. That practice we want. That's why we had the last workshop session also, and we told you then that during presentation we will expect that you will prepare the banner in the first slide. So if you still don't know what is banner, study our banners. What is coming? What are the key components in the banner? And same way, you prepare in Canva. So tomorrow I hope you all will bring the banner, first slide banner prepared in Canva, and you will put it as your title slide. Yes, you can start.
Good morning, everyone. Today I deal with the topic the invisible panopticon from Orwellian surveillance to digital self censorship. Orwellian surveillance means visible control to digital self censorship means invisible control. Here is my academic and presentation details. Here is table of contents. And my research question is how has surveillance evolved from Orwell's external coherence to digital self-censorship, and what does Ishiguro's unreliable narrator reveals about curated digital identity? Coercion means control forced by someone you don't want to do this in several way. And my hypothesis would be the digital panopticon functions through voluntary participation. Users curate identities, construct data doubles, and internalize surveillance. Now about introduction. In 1984, the telescreen was a physical impositor, a state mandated eye. In 2026, we carry our own telescreen in our pockets and we never turn them off. The paradox. In Orwell, surveillance imposed from above, resisted by citizens, but today, surveillance invited, curated, and shared by citizens. We are building what he calls the expository society, a platform for unprecedented level of exhibition, watching, and influence. Orwell telescreen was a threat. Today's smartphone is a companion. We now live in an expository society where exposure is not forced upon us but actively sought. We post our location, our mails, our children. We perform for an audience we cannot identify. The guard is invisible and the prisoner volunteers for the cage. Orwell versus digital surveillance. In Orwell's surveillance, we see the dystopian society. There is a telescreen who monitors citizens. There is state control surveillance. There we see the fear ensure obedience, force surveillance, and visibility as a control. On the other hand, dystopian society turned into digital society where there is no telescreen but smartphone track users. There is not state control surveillance, but corporate platform surveillance. There is not fear, but we get rewarded, encourage participation. There is not forced surveillance, but voluntary surveillance. We willingly do it. Visibility as a control, but here visibility as a performance. Today, surveillance is voluntary. Users willingly share personal information. Social media encourage visibility. Surveillance become internalized. Now about focus panopticon. So panopticon is a theory by Michael Foucault developed the concept of the panopticon. So panopticon is the design of prison. Like in this slide, we can see a tower where uh, he observe the owner he sit and observe everything, and prisoner behave well based on and this he takes from based on Jeremy Bentham's prison model. In his book uh, Discipline and Punish, prisoners behave because they may be watched. Surveillance becomes internalized, visibility is trapped. And in digital panopticon, today, surveillance is digital. Smartphone track behavior, algorithms monitor users, and data collection shapes behavior. Surveillance becomes invisible, and AI surveillance shapes behavior, not just monitoring it. What changed? Perron and Demertio. Perron and Demertio's 24 metacritics reveal something crucial. When they test panoptic theory against state surveillance, it fit perfectly. But social media surveillance doesn't fit. Users are both subject and observers. Data is volunteered, not extract. The goal is profit, not discipline. There are no walls because we build the cage ourselves. We don't resist because we want to be inside. In original panopticon, there is a visible tower. We can see here. And in digital panopticon, there is invisible. And prisoner, we can see here. And in digital panopticon, users are a volunteer. Uh, they perform in discipline because they feel fear. Someone is might watching us. But here in digital panopticon, there is a because of profit and prediction, and here is a fear of punishment. On the other hand, we desire for reward. Baudrillard hyperreality. So Jean Baudrillard introduced hyperreality, where representation on replace reality. Uh, Hyperreality is more real than real, and digital. That's why digital identity is greater than physical identity. Now about the data devil. The data double is digital identity becomes a double. Your digital self from LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, we see yourself. Algorithm judge digital identity, and digital self becomes real. And the data double theory is given by David Leon. The floating word. We can see unreliable narrator in artist of the floating way. There, the artist versus the digital influencer. Masuji Ono heroes his past to survive shifting political landscape, just as a modern user curate the feed to maximize social capital and performance. Identity becomes flexible and selective. Both the literary protagonist and the social media user suppress mistake to reconstruct a favorable history. The feed acts as a digital version of the floating world, a space where identity is temporary, performative, and subject to constant revision. The new memory hole, we can see in 1984, they burn history. But here, if the record can be edited, does truth exist? This central question highlights the danger of moving from the physical records to Orwellians to the ritual, editable archive of the digital age. In conclusion, surveillance has evolved from external coercion in 1984 to internalized digital self-surveillance today. Michael Focker's panopticon explained how users voluntarily regulate their behavior, while Jean Baudrillard's hyperreality highlights the rise of curated digital identities and data double. Similarly, Kazuo Ishiguro's unreliable narrator Masuji Ono reflects how identity becomes selective, flexible, and constructed. Thus, surveillance has shifted from external control to digital self censorship. The digital panopticon operates through voluntary participation and curated identities. Here is my learning outcomes, and here is my references. Any questions?
So, Shivani, my question is what are the implications of living in a society where the individuals monitor themselves?
When individuals monitor themselves, there is no force. We willingly do it, and that's why, which leads to self censorship. We can see identity, fake identity, and less freedom of expression is there. Next.
So, Shivani Degada, my question is how can people find their true self?
People can find their self in sitting alone, and we can not seems the fake reality of ourselves. We can be faithful towards ourselves, and in this way you can change yourself. Thank you.
नीचे रख थोड़ा नीचे बस done. Greetings to all. I am Sejat Chokya, and today I will deal with the topic archive memory and historical power, reconstructing the past in George Orwell's 1984 and Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World. Here are my academic and as well as my presentation details. There is the table of content. Literature often explores how societies remember, record, and interpret the past. History is not only a record of events, but it is often shaped by power, ideology, and system of memory. As in 1984, a totalitarian society where the state controls the archive and it manipulates historical records to maintain political power. This novel illustrates how the control of information and memory is controlled by the party, and history is reshaped by them, and it influences collective understanding of the past. Same happened in An Artist of the Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro, which explores the history is reconstructed through personal memory and narrative reflection, which can be reflected in the character Masuji Ono, and how it reshaped the understanding of historical events. My research question for this presentation is that how do archives and system of power shape the construction of historical truth in 1984 and An Artist of the Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro? How does George Orwell portrays the manipulation of archives and historical record as a mechanism of totalitarian control? How does Kazuo Ishiguro use memory and narration to reconstruct and reinterpret the past? What do these novels reveal about the relationship between memory and power and historical authority? Hypothesis would be historical truth is constructed rather than fixed, shaped by power and narrative control. In 1984, the state monopolizes archives to control memory and rewrites the history. In An Artist of the Floating World, history emerges through subjective memory and narrative self justification. Both novels demonstrate that control over memory and historical narrative determines ideological power. Theoretical framework would be Archive and Power by Jake Derrida. Archives are not neutral record but structure of authority and control. As Derrida argues that there is no political power without control of the archive. Controls over archive determines how history is recorded, preserved, and interpreted. In totalitarian control of history, totalitarian regimes maintain power by manipulating historical narratives, and the rewriting of history becomes a political strategy to sustain ideological authority. Collective memory is shaped by social and cultural frameworks rather than individual recollection alone. Collection memory is influence how societies interpret and reconstruct the past. Benjamin rejects the idea of history as a continuous narrative of progress, as history appears as fragments of memory interpreted from the perspective of the present. Historical Control in 1984. George Orwell's dystopian society illustrate how political power manipulates historical records to maintain ideological truth. Party exercise over the past through systematic manipulation, and it archives ideological conditioning and suppression of individual memory. Winston Smith's experiences shows that his experience expose how the control historical narratives becomes a mechanism to totalitarian demonstration. Manipulation of archives and ideology. In 1984, party controls history by rewriting archives, the Ministry of Truth. Winston alters past newspapers so the party always appears correct, turning archives into tools of political authority. As Orwell writes, all history was a palimpsest, scraped clean and re-inscribed exactly as often as all way was necessary. As Theo Finnegan argued that totalitarian regimes maintain power by erasing historical traces and controlling archival memory. The concept of doublethink forces citizens to accept contradictory truths, preventing them from questioning the manipulation of history. Winston's resistance and struggle for historical truth. Winston resists that party is manipulation of history by preserving personal memory and writing secret diary, which often is connected with the personal memory. The diary function as an alternative archive challenges the party's control over historical truth. Winston declares, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 make 4. As Irving Hose argues that 1984 presents history as a nightmare where truth become unstable under totalitarian power. And also, as Judith Scheckler notes, that the novel exposes how totalitarian regimes eliminate independent historical consciousness to maintain authority. Memory in An Artist of the Floating World. Uh, Unreliable memory and post-work reconstruction of history. An Artist of the Floating World history is reconstructed through the subjective memories of Masuji Ono. Ono's narration is unreliable, and he gradually revises his account of his role in Japanese wartime propaganda. His shifting recollects how that the past is not fixed but interpreted through present perspective. As Timothy Wright argues that Ishiguro presents history as a moral lesson filtered through personal memory and reflection. The novel therefore shows how post-war society reinterprets history in order to confront political guilt and responsibility. Personal memory as archives. Ono's recollection of function as personal archive that reconstruct the cultural and political history. Unlike the state-controlled archive in 1984, Ishiguro presents a emerging through individual narrative and memory. Rebecca Kearney poses that Ishiguro employs a translation realism where identity is not an essence but a cultural mythological construction mediated through the narrator's language and selected. Memory, therefore, does not simply preserve the past but reshapes the interprets it. Comparative analysis. In 1984, history is controlled through state archive manipulated by the party. As Theo Finnegan notes that Totalitarian regimes maintain power by controlling archival memory and erasing historical evidence. In an artist of the floating world, history emerges through Masuji Ono's personal memory and the narration, which is unreliable. Timothy Wright argues that Ishiguro presents history as a filtered through personal memory and moral reconsideration. Power and Historical Truth in 1984. Political authority construct historical truth through archival control and ideological manipulation. In Ishiguro's novel, historical truth is shaped by subjective memory and post-war reinterpretation of the war. Both texts therefore reveals that history is not fixed but constructed through system of power and narrative controls. Here is the conclusion. Both 1984 and Artist of the Floating World reveals that history is not a neutral record but a constructed narrative shaped by power and memory. In 1984, the party maintains authority by controlling truth, power, and history's historical record. As Derrida suggests, that control of the archive determines the authority to define history, while Holberg shows that memory itself is socially shaped. Ultimately, both novels expose how power is ideology and memory determines the way society understand and reconstruct the past. Here are the slides of references. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Sejad, my question is so Sejad, my question is if even personal memory can be biased like in Ishiguro, then is resistance to power like Mr. Diary actually effective or just an illusion?
Thank you, Shivani, for your question. Wilson's resistance is important, and his diary writing is also important, but it is limited because there are also personal aspects which affect that. Because the diary writing is something personal, but it also consume is also covers something historical truth, historical events which happened. His diary represents an attempt to preserve objective truth. Uh, so therefore, resistance exists, but it is never fully secure because both external power and personal or internal memory can reshape uh, reality. Is there any questions?
So, Sejad, you showed that both political power and personal memory shape history. So, which one do you think is more reliable in the preserving truth?
Okay, Aditya, thank you for your question. I think that both interpretations are unreliable because in 1984, truth and history, historical preservation is controlled by party and it is manipulated by them. While on the other hand, in Artist of the Floating World, history, memory, and the truth is shown through the perspective of Masuji Ono, which is quite personal. So, in that sense, both are unreliable, but there is this sense of uh, that idea of that both are somewhere true, both are somewhere reliable. But if we see that in 1984, party is manipulating truth and historical events and historical preservation, and in 1984, it is also affected by personal justification and personal memory, and also through past. That is why, in that sense, both are unreliable. This is from my side. Thank you so much.
If it is relevant, you can give that. It is relevant to the topic.
Hello. So good morning, everyone. Uh, so today I will go with my topic, which is the power of language, newspeak, and thought control. So here is my academic details and presentation details. This is the table of content and the introduction. My presentation explores how the manipulation of language serves as the ultimate tool of totalitarian dominance. By examining the transition from old speak to new speak, we analyze the party's attempt to reconstruct human consciousness. The goal is not merely communication, but the architectural deconstruction of the mind's capacity for dissent. As we delve into the scholarly analysis, we see that language is the cognitive infrastructure of the power. Newspeak's ultimate function is not merely to restrict the speech to eradicate dissent by rendering the rebellious thought linguistically impossible. And here is my research question, that does the systematic reduction of language in newspeak effectively eliminate the cognitive capacity for a political dissent? And the hypothesis is newspeak functions as a linguistic engineering rather than simple censorship. Grounded in the Sapphire Whorf's hypothesis, the party's removal of nouns signifies collapses the signified concept in the mind. By deleting the word rebellion and enforcing duck speak, the state creates a cognitive boundary where revolt becomes conceptual and unconstructible, effectively bypassing the brain's analytical center to automatic orthodoxy. And the philosophical foundation of newspeak is based on the premise that if a thought cannot be expressed in words, it cannot be convinced. The party aims to replace the English language, it means old speak, uh, all speak with a restricted artificial vocabulary. This is not a natural evolution of language, but strategic linguistic engineering designed to narrow the range of human thought. By controlling the medium, the party controls the message and the very reality of the citizens of Oceania. The party's objective in creating newspeak is to narrow the range of thought. Words are not just symbols, but become the very boundaries of what can be known. And here's the mechanism one, that vocabulary reduction. The most striking feature of newspeak is the deliberating shrinking of vocabulary. Synonym and antonyms are systematically deleted. For example, the word bad is replaced by ungood, and the excellent by plus good. This eliminates the nouns required for critical thinking. When you lose the vocabulary for liberty or justice, the desire for those concept eventually withers away, because they become literally unthinkable. Its reduction was again, and since the smaller the area of choice, the smaller the temptation to take the thought. Linguistic determination, the Sapphire Whorf's hypothesis. Always, Orwell's Newspeak is a dark application of Sapphire Whorf's hypothesis, which suggests that the structure of language determines a native speaker's perception and categorization of experiences. And in Oceania, the party uses the theory of enforced orthodoxy by stripping language of its complexity. They ensure that the mind cannot wander into heretical territories. Linguistic determinants become a cage for the human spirit. And the semiotics of control. In semiotics, a science consists of the signifiers, the word, and the signified, the concept. Newspeak word by collapsing the space between them. The party redefines words so they have only one rigid literal meaning. For instance, free can only means clear of, as in this, dog is free from lice. It can no longer signify political or intellectual freedom, effectively removing the concept from the human psyche. And duck speaks, the end of conscious speech. One of the ultimate goal of newspeak is the duck speak. So to speak without thinking, like a duck quacking, the speaker emits sound that are ideologically correct but required zero cognitive engagement. This bypass the brain's analytical functions. If speech is automatic and unconscious, thought crime become impossible, because there is no thought occurring during act of communication. The ultimate purpose of newspeak is to make a language that was as nearly as possible independent of consciousness. Newspeak and reconstruction of history. Language is a vessel for history. By destroying all speak, the party also destroys the ability to understand the past. If records of the past are rewritten in newspeak, future generation will have no way of knowing that life was ever different. This historical amnesia is facilitated by language, and cannot describe historical change, norms, or the evolution of human rights. Double thinking and the linguistic paradox. Newspeak is the perfect vehicle for double think, the ability to hold two contradictory belief in one's mind simultaneously, and accept both of them. Slogans like "war is peace" or "freedom is slavery" rally or on a linguistic structure that forces the mind of abandon logic. Newspeak provides the grammatical framework for these paradoxes to accepted as absolute truth by populace. The role of euphemism in thought control. Euphemism in newspeak serves to hide the brutality of the state. The Ministry of Love is a place to for torture, and the Ministry of Plenty is manages the starvation by using words that means the opposite of their reality. The party prevents the population from accurately identifying their own suffering. This linguistic camouflage is essential for maintaining the illusion of a benevolent and a successful government. The politics of language in 1984 relies heavily on the use of euphemism to mask the state violence. The linguistic strategies of resistance. Is it possible to fight back against the newspeak? Scholars suggest that linguistic resistance involves the preservation of literature, poetry, and the complex storytelling. By maintaining a rich nouns vocabulary, individuals can protect their inner room, the private space of thought that the party seeks to invade. Reclaiming all speak is an act of political rebellion and a defense of human consciousness. Linguistic strategies to fight Orwellian dystopia include the deliberate cultivation of complex, non-standardizing form of expression. Newspeak in digital era. Today we see digital newspeak in the form of character limits, emojis replacing words, and rhythmic filtering. While not enforced by the totalitarian state, this technological constraint similar reduced to the complexity of human discourses. This slide discuss that whether our modern communication habits are inadvertently achieving the party's goal of narrowing human thought through the convenient linguistic shortcuts. In digital communication mirrors the newspeak's role in cognitive restriction by prioritizing the brevity of over depth. And here is the conclusion. The power of language in the is the power to define our existence. Orwell's newspeak serves as a timeless warning. When we allow our language to be thinned out, our thoughts follow. To protect freedom, we must protect the richness of our language speech. As we have seen through these academic resources, the battle for the mind begins with the battle for the words. To control language is to control mind. Newspeak remains the ultimate cautionary tale for cognitive engineering. And here is my learning out that what I have defined. It defined newspeak not as a dialect but as a cognitive infrastructure designed to render dissent linguistically impossible. Critically, evaluate critically the sapphire verbs hypothesis and how the collapse of signifiers leads to the extinction of complex thought. It identified the role of vocabulary reduction and duck space in automatic orthodoxy and preventing thought crime. It synthesizes connection between Orwellian concept and modern digital communications tendency towards brevity and slogan based discourses. And here is my references. So thank you. If you guys have any question, please ask.
Sandeep, my question is what is the main purpose of Newspeak in 1984?
Okay, thank you, Shivani. So basically, the main purpose of Newspeak is to what we can say to control people and the another thing is Newspeak is used here because the people will not express their rebellious ideas in 1984. This is the main purpose of Newspeak. Okay, any other?
Sandeep, what is Duke speak in Newspeak?
Okay, thank you, Sajad. Basically, Duke speak means people are what we can say. People are repeating the words. They cannot thinking on it. Just using slogans and other. Only repeating the words is the basic meaning of this Duke speak in Newspeak. So, thank you. This is from my side.
Slide share કેમ નથી થતી? Good morning, everyone. I'm Rudra Upadhyay, and today's my presentation topic is modernist ideology and political commitment in W.H. Auden's late 1930s poetry. Let's begin. Here are my academic information. Then here are the points which I'm going to discuss in this presentation. So basically my research question is how does W.H. Auden negotiate the tension between modernist poetic autonomy and political commitment in his late 1930s poetry? Hypothesis would be W.H. Auden's late 1930s poetry demonstrate that modernist poetic autonomy and political commitment are not mutually exclusive. Rather,
he redefines political engagement through aesthetic complexity, ambiguity, and moral reflection instead of direct ideological propaganda. So, the period, late 1930s, was a period of profound political instability marked by the rise of fascism, the Spanish Civil War, and the approaching catastrophe of Second World War. And the approaching catastrophe of Second World War. During this period, poets were increasingly confronted with the question of whether literature should remain aesthetically autonomous or actively intervenes in political discourse. W.H. Auden, as a central modernist figure, stands at the heart of this debate. His poetry of late 1930s reflect a deep engagement with political crisis, stimulously questioning the ability of poetry to function function as direct political action. So my presentation exploring how W.H. Auden negotiate the tension between modernist ideology and political commitment in late 1930s poetry. So what is modernist ideology? So modernist ideology often emphasize on artistic complexity, ambiguity, and formal innovation, while resisting simplistic moral and political messaging. Rather than treating poetry as propaganda, modernist writers frequently insisted on aesthetic independence and intellectual subtlety. Now, Auden's poetic thinking reflect this ideology. He was wary of reducing poetry to political slogan, even when addressing urgent historical crises. Thus, modernism for Auden is not political indifference, but a refusal to allow art to be overtaken by ideology. Now, political commitment in the period of 1930s and the context related to W.H. Auden's poetry. Despite Auden's modernist learning, Auden was deeply shaped by the political pressure of the late 1930s period. The decade profound intense expectation that writers should publicly oppose fascism and economic injustice. Auden's poetry during this time reflects an acute awareness of modern moral responsibility and collective suffering. However, his engagement is intellectually complex rather than rhetorically direct. He portrays political anxiety, social fragmentation, and ethical uncertainty without offering simple solution. So this dual impulse to engage politically while resisting doctrine expression reveals a central tension within the work of Auden. Now the debate between poetry and politics, whether we support politics in context of literature or literature should be far away from the politics. One of the central scholarly debates surrounding Auden concern whether his poetry advocates political intervention or critique the very idea of political poetry. Now, instead, Auden dramatized the limitation of poetry in the face of historical catastrophe. His work questions whether poetic language can truly alter political events, suggesting instead that poetry's influence may be indirect, ethical, or reflective rather than the revolutionary ideas. Now, revision, self-criticism, and ideological shift in Auden's poetry itself. Auden's later revisions and exclusions of some political explicit poems indicates his discomfort with possibility that poetry might function as propaganda. His shift reveals a deepening commitment to modernist principle of complexity and moral seriousness rather than overt political intrusion. So critics note that his development reflect not a withdrawal from politics, but a more nuanced understanding of art's limits and responsibilities. So now critical reception and intellectual legacy of Auden. Critical discussion of Auden often emphasize that Auden's intellectual rigor and moral seriousness. The scholarly reception acknowledge that his late 1930s poetry embodies a profound engagement with history while preserving aesthetic discipline. So he combined both the idea poetry should remain aesthetically same at the time with the context of political ideology. Now, this balance has contributed significantly to his enduring reputation in 20th century literary studies. So, let's conclude this presentation that Auden's late 1930s poetry reveals a dynamic negotiation between modernist ideology and political commitment. He neither abandons political responsibility nor allow poetry to collapse into propaganda. And this is his biggest achievement in the late 1930s period while he was writing poetry. Here is my learning outcomes and here are the references. Now, anyone have any questions? So you are free to ask me.
So Rudra, your whole presentation was based on political poetry
Yes.
and the political idea which is connected with poetry. So, do you think is it possible for poetry to remain neutral during the time of political crisis?
Shahzad, basically it is different to become poetry neutral at a time of political crisis, because the historical context or the political crisis itself shaped the ideology and the idea and inspiration of poet himself. So poet cannot be abandoned from the political crisis. So it reflect on the emotional aspects or the ideological aspects of poetry itself. Now, any other question?
Hello. So Rudra, my question is, can poetry really influence political change, or is its role only reflective?
No, Sandeep, its role is not only reflective, but it might bring change, but not in direct way, but indirect way. Like it cannot change the law or anything, but it can change the people's ideology, emotion, or moral awareness. So the society could bring change in itself. So this was from my side. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Today I will present about the an artist of the floating world by Kazuo Ishiguro. So this is my research question. My research question is how does memory influence Masuji Ono's understanding of moral responsibility in an artist of the floating world? Hypothesis in an artist of the floating world, Kazuo Ishiguro shows that Masuji Ono's selective memory helps him protect his dignity and avoid full responsibility for his past action before World War the Second. Next is introduction. Uh, um, Introduction, memory and moral responsibility. This text, an artist of the floating world, Ishiguro explores the relationship between memory, identity, and responsibility in post-war Japan after World War the Second. The novel follows Masuji Ono, an aging painter who
reflect on his career and his involvement in nationalist propaganda before the war. Through his recollections, Ishiguro examines how individuals inter- interrupt their past when society change its moral value. The narrative shows that memory can be selective and shaped by the personal emotion. Next is themes of memory. Uh, uh, Selective memory. Ono remember event that present him in a positive light. Memories that cause discomfort or guilt or often minimized. This selective recollection allows him to maintain his dignity, and it is also shows how individuals reshape the past for self protection. And fragmented narrative, the story moves between different time period and memories. Events are not presented in a strict chronological order. This fragmented structure reflects the natural process of remembering. It is also creates uncertain about the reliability of the narrator. Memory and identity. Ono's identity is closely connected to his memories, and an artist, his recollections help him construct a respectable self-image. When society begins to criticize his past actions, his identity becomes unstable. This reveals how memory influence personal identity. And unreliable reliable narration. Ono's narrative sometimes contradicts itself. A certain detail change as he reflects on the past. Readers are encouraged to question the accuracy of his memories. This technique highlights the difference between memory and truth. This is moral. This is memory is explained uh, how memory works in the novel, and Ono's recollections are selective and sometimes inaccurate, showing that personal memory can distort truth and history. Next is moral responsibility. This is a show personal accountability. Ono reflects on whether he should accept responsibility for his action. He owns believed that his nationalist art was patriotic and honorable. After the war, society begins to question these beliefs. This forced him to reconsider his earlier choice. In social judgment, this is shows a younger character in the novel view the past differently. They are critical of the value that shaped Ono's career. Their opinions make owners aware of changing social attitude. This generational contrast highlights the moral transformation in society. And then conflict between pride and guilt. Ono feels proud of his influence as an artist, and at the same time he senses that his work supported harmful ideas. This internal conflict appears throughout his reflections. It reveals the emotional complexity of accepting responsibility. And then ethical reflection. The narrative encourage reader to think about moral choices. Individuals often act according to the belief of their time. However, later generations may judge those actions differently. The novel explores how people confront such moral dilemmas. The next, post-war Japanese context. This is a historical background. The novel is set in Japan after its defeat in World War II. The country is undergoing political and social con- constru- construction. Old value connected with nationalism are questioned. This historical setting shapes Ono's reflection on his past. Cultural transformation. Post-war Japan experienced rapid cultural change. New democratic idea replace early earlier political belief, and this change influence how society view the past. Honor struggle to adapt to these shifting values, and the decline of narration nationalism, uh, idealism that ideas that were on celebrate how becomes controversial. Land nationalist propaganda is criticized it in in the new political climate. Ono realized that his artist contributions supported this ideology. This recog- recognition creates uncertainty about his legacy and social reconstruction. Japan is rebuilding its critic and social institution. Uh, this reconstruction symbolized a new national identity. The younger generation focuses on the future rather than the past. Ono's memory is contrast with this forward-looking perspective. Next is narrative technique. Ishiguro used the first person narration and subtle irony and memory gaps, and then psychological realism. This this and then conclusion, the novel demonstrates that memory is selective and shaped by personal emotions and social pressures. Onos recalls his past career as a nationalist painter before World War II, but his recollections are often uncertain and sometimes contradictory. Through these shifting memories, Ishiguro shows how individual reconstruct construct the past in order to protect their dignity and self-image. Ono's reflection revealed both pride in his earlier achievement and quiet recognition that his action may have supported harmful and political idea. As society is in war, post-war Japan changed its value. Ono is forced to consider his past role and reputation. Therefore, the novel suggests that memory and can influence how people interpret their moral responsibility, and sometimes allowing them to avoid fully confronting their mistake while still searching for personal dignity and meaning. This is my reference, and then thank you. Anyone can question.
So, Riddhi, my question to you is what ways does self deception function as a psychological mechanism and negotiating guilt and moral responsibility?
So self deception helps Onos avoid accepting his mistake and guilt. He convinced himself that his past and actions were right or justified, uh, which protects him from emotional pain. However, this also shows his inner struggle. Psychological defense allows him to maintain uh, but it also prevent his from fully accepting moral responsibility. Anyone?
Hello. So, Riddhi, my question is, what extent does fragmented memories destabilize the relation between a personal identity and the historical truth?
Fragmented memory makes Ono's understanding of his past unclear and incomplete. He remembers some event differently or avoid certain truth uh, which personal story does not fully match real historical fact. This shows that memory is not always reliable and can change over time. Certain confusion between personal identity and actual history. Thank you.
Where is not higher? કાઢી દે મને કાઢી દે મને નહીં સ્લાઇડ શો રીધી નહીં આવે હા, ન્યા. બસ ઉપર Hello, my topic is the panoptical and the proletarians Marxist and folklore analysis of power in 1984. Here, panoptic mean someone who continuously watching you, and proles mean someone who work as a middle class or as a lower class worker. This is my academic information, table of content, research question. How does Orwell despite power in 1984 through social structure and surveillance language control? And how does the affect individual freedom and resistance? My hypothesis, the party in 1984 used a combination of social hierarchy and sociological resistance that so totalitarianism remains resigned can maintain demon sense even when the majority proles appear free, but not they are the free. Introduction, power and control in 1984. We show the class struggle and the continuously watching and the speech control or newspeak type of powers in 1984. Proles is a working class and a panoptic means someone is continuously watching you. Then Marxist analysis of 1984. Class struggle, social and society is derived into three groups. First is inner party, the second is out party, and third is proles. In only three has a one leader, which is Big Brother. This division keeps power in the hand and the inner party, but no equality in this play. Ideology and the power in the party control is through history and knowledge. As an example, Wilson is job in Ministry of Truth, but he don't tell the truth to public. Shows party control the history. False consciousness. We show a proper plot and consciousness in the novel, but the consciousness is the false, not a true consciousness. Marxist insights. Power comes from money, control, anxiety, and power. The inner party gets all benefit, but the outer party and the proles don't have any judgment or any rights. Extra Marxist point. Proles is 85% in the Oceania, but the inner party and the leader have the 50% in the Oceania. So they never think about the rebellions. Now, Facalian section or Facalian theory. Facalian or population theory means psychological control on the people through the body, mind, and whatever thing. But they control people than the psychological, or they make psyche on the people. The panoptical or surveillance in the 1984, people are watched all the time. People don't have the free time for themselves, but the Wilson go against that and write diary, and also Julia who make love with someone or anyone. Language control. The 10th edition of Newspeak dictionary is come out in the Oceania by the Big Brother. No one have a language control or free language in Oceania. For the language controlling skill, the party make a proper judgment that no one is go against the party. Thought control. If language is controlling or language is a newspeak, so no one have a new thought, or the Ministry of Thought is also control the people thought, and no one go against the party or Big Brother. Now combination analysis of both theory and 1984. Power and control. In 1984, we go through the two theories.
Marxist and Faulkner. Both are suggest that society controlled by individual control, body, mind, no personal freedom, thought and punishment. People live in fear, cannot trust for anyone. Example from Texas, Wilson is afraid of transcriptions when he caught from the written diary what happened, and he hidden his thought in the diary. Resistance and reality. No one is live in reality. All are living resistant or a false consciousness in this novel. Wilson is try to resist, but he is only one who try to resist. Anyone who earlier from the Wilson want to resist, they are failed and get punishment in room number 101. Resistant false consciousness completely. Reality is no freedom, no truth in the novel and the propaganda of war. Dystopia is this novel is proper dystopia, not utopia. But Big Brother is represent this environment Oceania like this state is utopia. This is a detailed infography of my presentation. Conclusion. In conclusion, 1984 is reveals that power is more effective when is both visibility structure. Thus, the novel expresses not only political dominant but the complete control on the human consciousness. Then Marxist theory is show the lower class and the middle class struggles, and Faulkner theory describe the control by psychological thoughts in the novel. These are the references. Thank you. Any questions?
Excellent presentation on comparison of Marxism with 1984. So I have very basic question, that is there any possibility of revolution in the novel 1984?
According to, thank you, Rudra, first of all, but according to Marxist theory, there is a lower class, middle class, and inner party, out party concept in the novel. But there is a second theory, is Faulkner theory. According to this, party is controlling people through the psychological, mental health, through the mind and body. So, if anyone have that psyche or power or encouragement to go out through that, like Wilson, so maybe the revolution is possible in future. Anyone else?
Hello.
So, Nancy, my question is, how does the body become a site of power in 1984?
Thank you, Riddhi. We applying two theory. According to Faulkner theory or Michael's theory, body in room number 101, Big Brother is taking people and get the punishment. Wilson get the punishment of mice because he was afraid, or he is afraid from the mice. So it shows the psychological control through the body and mind. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Today, my presentation topic is silence, gaps, and unsaid reading absence in artists of floating world. This is my academic information, table of content. Research question. How does Kazuo Ishiguro use silence, narrative gaps, and indirect language in Artist of Floating World to represent memory, moral responsibility, and the recognition of identity in post-war Japan? Hypothesis. Silence and narrative gaps in the novel function as a deliberate aesthetic and psychological strategies through which Ono reconstructs his past, mimesis moral responsibility, and negotiate a fractured identity, thereby revealing memory and selective, unstable, and shaped by self preservation. Introduction. An Artist of Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro is set in post war Japan, a time when the country is rebuilding after World War II. The novel explores how individual deals will change in society, especially when their past belief no longer fit the present. The story focuses on Masuji Ono, an engaging artist who reflects of his life through his memory. The novel examines important themes such as the memory, identity, and responsibility. However, these memories are not always that clear and rebellion. The narrative style in indirect and fragmented. Ono often speak in hesitant way, using the phrases like phrase or I may be mistaken, which to create doubt about the truth of his account. This makes reader question what is the real and what is being avoided. What is the silence in the novel? In Artist of the Floating World, silence does not mean that nothing be communicate. Instead become a meaningful narrative technique. What is the left unsaid often carries as much importance as what is spoken. Silence appears in different forms throughout the novel. It includes pause and narration, where Ono stops short or exam- explaining something fully, as well as vague language where details are unclear or softened. Culture background. The idea of floating world comes from Japanese culture and refer to a world of pleasure, beauty, and temporary experience. It is often linked with art, entertainment, and a way of life that focus on the present moment rather than preeminence. In this culture context, life is seen a transit and changing, like something that floats and does not stay fixed. Because of this, people express idea more subtle and indirect way rather than speaking directly. Floating world and indirect meaning. The artist tradition of the floating world does not present clear moral lesson or direct judgment. Instead, it show sense of life and subtle and subjective way, leaving interpretation open to the viewer. Because of this meaning, it's often indirect. Viewer or readers are expected to understand deeper idea by paying attention to small detail and hints. Onos as a selective narrator. The story in Artist of the Floating World in told entirely from the perspective of Masuji Ono. The means reader only see event through his personal memory and opinion, not an objective truth. This kind of language creates doubt and hesitation in the narrative. It suggests that Ono may be unsure of his own past, may be avoiding certain truth. Silence, silence as a memory gap. In Artist of Floating World, Ono does not clearly or fully describe many of his past actions, especially those connected of his role before the war. Importantly, events are often only particularly told. Ono gives limited detail and sometimes move quickly or movement that seems highlight significant. This create gaps in the narrative. Memory and the novel become selective and rather than a clear, accurate record of event. Silent and moral evasion. Ono does not openly admit or clearly state his mistake from the past. Instead of directly accepting responsibility, he speaks a careful and indirect way. In this way, silence becomes a tool of moral avoidance, allowing Ono to distance himself from responsibility while still appearing reflective. Psychological silence. In the Artist of Floating World, silence is not only a narrative technique but was also a psychological response on often avoiding thinking deeply about the event that many cause his discomfort. Fragmentation and gap. The narrative structure of an artist of floating world is a non-linear meaning event are not told in simple chronological order. These gaps are not accidental. They are reflect the way memory works and also show how Ono choose or tell the story. The unsaid as a meaning. In artist of floating world, what is not said is often as important as what is clearly expressed. Silence carry hidden meaning and suggest a deeper truth beneath the surface. Language of hesitation. At the same time, this hesitation may also suggest that he is avoiding clear statement about uncomfortable truth. This language instead both uncontently and avoiding of truth, recognizing the idea that silence and indirectness shape the narrative. Fragmentation and gaps. The narrative structure of arting of floating world is a non-linear, meaning events are not told the simple chronological orders. Because of this structure, reader must be actively reconstruct meaning by the connection different part of the narrative and interpreting what is missing. This is a infograph to all my presentation. Conclusion. This is study has shown the silent in artist of floating world is not merely an absence of speak, but is a central narrative and psychological device through hesitation, missing and indirect expression. Ono construct a version of his past that are partial are controlled rather than fully truthful. Furthermore, the novel used the silence of connected as the aesthetic tradition of the floating world where meaning is conveyed through suggestion rather than direct statement. Ishiguro adapts this culture from his modern narrative technique, making unsaid as a meaningful as the spoken. This is my references. Thank you.
So, Milan bhai, my question is, how does Ono avoid truth?
He used indirect language. He avoids clear statement about the past action. This helped him to escape guilt and responsibility.
Hello, Milan. There is a very common question that what is the unsaid in the novel?
The unsaid to refer to hidden meaning in the silence and gaps. Important events are often only partially describe. Reader must interpret what is the meaning. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Today my topic is Hindu philosophy and the concept of waiting for Godot. This is my academic information. Then my table of contents. Research question is how does the concept of waiting for Godot reflect philosophical ideas that resemble Hindu concepts such as samsara, the cycle of existence, and the human search for spiritual liberation? Hypothesis is the continuous waiting experienced by Vladimir and Estragon represent the cyclical nature of human existence, which closely parallels the Hindu philosophical concept of samsara. That their repeated expectations and hopes for Godot's arrival symbolize the human desire for transformation and fulfillment, reflecting the philosophical search for liberation from existential uncertainty, similar to the Hindu idea of moksha. Introduction. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot is one of the most significant plays of modern drama, and it's often associated with the theater of absurd. The play focuses on the two characters, Vladimir and Estragon, who wait endlessly for a mysterious figure named Godot. Although the Godot never arrives, the characters continue waiting with hope and expectation. This unusual dramatic situation reflects the uncertainty and confusion that often characterize human existence. The theme of waiting raises important philosophical questions about time, meaning, faith, and the human search for purpose, suggesting that waiting itself may. Philosophical background and the play. The philosophical dimension of waiting for Godot centers of human uncertainty and existential questioning. The play reflects a world where traditional structure of meaning appear unstable or obstinate. Characters struggle to understand their situation and attempt to fill time with conversations, memories, and small action. Their dialogue often moves between humor, despair, highlighting the complexity of human experience. The concept of waiting in the play. Waiting is the central action that defines the entire structure of the play. Vladimir and Estragon spend both waiting for Godot, believing that his arrival with somehow changes their lives. However, Godot never appear in the characters, remain trapped in a repetitive routine of waiting, talking, and questioning their situation. Their waiting becomes a symbol of human expectation and uncertainty. Here is the table of key concept of Hindu philosophy. Here we can say samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth experienced by all living beings. Then karma, the principle that every action products consequences that influence on future existence. Then moksha, this is a liberation from the cycle of samsara and attainment of spiritual freedom. Then Maya, the illusionary nature of reality that prevents individuals from seeing ultimate truth. The cycle of samsara and cycling waiting. The repetitive structure of waiting for Godot strongly reflect the idea of cycling existence. Both acts of the plays contain similar situation, conversation, and expectation. So the characters repeat their routines without reaching a clear resolution, suggesting they are trapped within a continuous pattern of waiting. This pattern resembles the Hindu philosophical concepts of samsara, in which individuals remain within cycle of existence until they achieve spiritual liberation. Then existential themes in the play. The play also reflects existential philosophical ideas that emphasize uncertainty of human existence and the search for meaning. So here we can say in this play, Vladimir and Estagron frequently question their situation, expressing doubt about their memories, their purpose, and the meaning of their actions. Their conversation reveal a struggle to understand their place in the world. This existential uncertainty highlights the idea individual must confront life's ambiguity while continuing to search for meaning in the direction. Then religious interpretation for Godot. Some interpretation suggests that Godot may represent a symbolic or spiritual figure. The characters believe that that his arrival is bring guidance for transformation. Their continuous expectation reflect from a faith or hope that something meaningful will eventually occur. Their spiritual dimension introduces the idea that waiting may symbolize the human search for divine guidance or enlightenment. So these religious language and symbolical elements within the play suggest that waiting can also represent a spiritual journey toward understanding and fulfillment. Time and repetition. Time in the play appears unusual because events repeat in a pattern that seem almost circular, that the two acts of the play mirror each other in struggle and events. So this repetition here we can say create the impression of the characters are not processing toward a definitely outcome but are instead caught in a continuous cycle. Such a representation of time reflect philosophical ideas about repetitive patterns that often shape human life and experience, human hope and search for meaning. Despite their frustration and uncertainty, Vladimir and Estragon continue to hope that Godot will arrive. Their hope reflects the universal human desire to believe that life has meaning and the change is possible. Even in the difficult situation, people often maintain hope for improvement or transformation. So, this precedent hope seek purpose and direction in life, even when answer then remain uncertain. This is a comparative analysis of waiting in the play and Hindu philosophy. Here we can say the waiting in the play are endless waiting for Godot and Hindu philosophy according samsara. Then hope for change and search for liberation. So this comparison shows how the theme presented in the play correspond the philosophical ideas found in Hindu thought. Both perspectives explore how individuals experience cycle of expectation, uncertainty, and the desire for transformation. Then symbolism in the play. The play contains several symbolic elements that reinforces philosophical themes that represent phases of time, the possibility of change, especially when it shows light transformation between two acts. So this symbol emphasizes how human beings often live with expectation they may never fulfill but continue to search for meaning and direction. Here is the significance of the study. So, analyze this play through perspective of Hindu philosophy allows a broader understanding of his themes, while this play is often studying through Western existential philosophy. Examine it through Eastern philosophical ideas, highlights its universal relevance. Here is the infograph on my whole presentation. Here we can say the cycle of waiting, search for enlightenment, the philosophy of samsara, and the symbol of time and hope. Then conclusion. The concept of waiting in waiting for Godot representing a profound reflection of human condition. The character's endless waiting symbolizes the representative patterns of existence. Here is my learning outcome. So through this presentation, I learned that the concept of waiting in waiting for Godot represents the deeper human experience of uncertainty, repetition, and the search for meaning. Here is my resources. And thank you. If you have any question, please ask me.
Hello, Khushi. Does the play reflect the karma theory or not?
No, it's does not follow karma because in the play action have no result, so nothing happen. So we can say in this play, Vladimir and Estragon both are waiting for Godot, but in the land Godot is not coming, so that's why.
Kushi, my question is, can the play be read as a modern reinterpretation of spiritual stagnation?
So in this waiting for Godot play, we can say the Vladimir and Estragon are just waiting, not improving. So it shows people being stuck instead of spirituality growing. Thank you. This is from my side.
ઊંચું નહીં.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jansi Rathod, and today I'm going to present language engineering, newspeak as a model for political linguistics. Here's the academic information. Here are the table of contents. So my research question is, how does newspeak functions as a model of language engineering to shape political thought and enforce ideological control in 1994? And the hypothesis is that newspeak functions as a system of language engineering that reduces linguistic complexity, restructures meaning, and limits the thought, thereby enabling the ideological control. Introduction. So the language play a crucial role in shaping human perception, and these structures shows how individual understands the world. In political context, we can see the language is powerful instrument, but and the influencing, and we can also see the influencing thoughts and controlling ideology by the political group. In 1984, the Newspeak is introduced as deliberately constructed language designed to eliminate dissent by restricting the range of expression, the language and power. So language is deeply connected with power structure, and this defines what can be said, and which determines is what can be thought, and this thought shapes us the ideology. Language engineering. So the language engineering refers to design and manipulation of language, and we can see the features which include reduction of vocabulary, simplification of grammar, restriction of meaning, and we can see Newspeak as an example, which is fully engineered language system designed to regulate the thought. Political linguistics. Political linguistic examines how language functions within the systems, and how the language is used to construct the ideology, and how linguistic structures influences the beliefs. And in this context, we can see that Newspeak represents the extreme form of political linguistic control. Newspeak as a constructed language. Newspeak is intentionally created, and their primary goals are eliminate dissent, prevent alternative thinking, and standardizes the ideological expression. Structure of the Newspeak and vocabulary reduction. So the Newspeak is divided into three categories. The first is everyday communication, second is political and ideological terms, and third is technical language. One of the key mechanisms of Newspeak is a systematic reduction of vocabulary, in which we can see synonyms are removed, antonyms are simplified, and words are compressed. For example, bad becomes ungood, very good becomes plus good. Semantic control, language, and ideology. In Newspeak, meaning is fixed and controlled, and interpretation are restricted, and and by the end, the meaning becomes the rigid, and this eliminates critical thinking and debate. Thought limitation and death of language. The thought is totally dependent on the language. Without words, concepts are not existed, and the restriction of the language is directly restrict cognitive capacity, and this ensures dissenting ideas cannot be formed, and Newspeak leads to decline of language, and their effects are loss of nuisance, loss of individuality. uh, Technology and control. Language controls. Language control is supported totally by the institutional system, and standardization of communication, enforcement of linguistic norms, and technological systems are can be reinforce linguistic limitations and controls the information flow. Engineered linguistic system, computational logic, and linguistic mechanism. Newspeak is fully designed with a specific purpose, in which we can see that every word has a function, no unnecessary expression exists. And Newspeak resembles a computational system, in which we can see rules are based, predictable, and limited flexibility. Newspeak as a parody. Newspeak functions as a critique of political language, and it exaggerates the real world practices and highlights the manipulation in discourse. Here's the comparative table of natural language and Newspeak. Conclusion. So the Newspeak functions as a model of language engineering by systematically reducing vocabulary, fixing meanings, and limiting linguistic expression. As a result, language becomes a powerful tool for political control, and demonstrating that the manipulation of linguistic structure can be lead to control the thoughts and reinforcement of ideological dominance. Here are the references. Thank you. If anyone have question, you may ask. So Khushi, the Newspeak is dangerous because it limits the free thought, and it makes the harder questions and to express the different ideas.
Chancy, my question is why is language important in political power?
So Milan, language shapes how people thinks and speak, and in politics, the rulers are controlling people's ideas and hiding their truth, and also making them accept their own ideas to follow them. Thank you. Mm.
ऊपर ले डन डन Hello, hello. Good afternoon. I am Goel Jaipal. Today I will represent a frozen city and the silence voice. Audience 1939 eleges as a laboratory of modernism. There are my presentation information and academic informations. There are table of contents, uh, historical crucibles, 1939s, a year of geopolitical fractures, January 1939 serve as a literally and symbolical dark school day. The death of Yeats coincided with the fall of Barcelona, showing the end of Spanish Civil War and the failure as the leftist ideas. Transition of cells. Kruzkov notes that 1939 is when audience move from political poets and the 1930s to private existentialism of 1940s. Laboratory concept. A poem act as a controlled environment where audience test if language can survive a low dishonest decade can slide toward totally wars. There are my research question and hypothesis. Research question: to what extent does ordained re-engineering of the alleges from allow him to solve previous importance of the art with the survival of the individual human voice in the middle of 20th century tragedy. There are hypotheses by surveying pastoral inventions, synthesizes of PTs of Wilfred Owen its formal structure. Uh, Ordinance structure as a secular player that validated poetry, not political tools, but as an essential protection human consciousness. Their elegiac act performance of a ritual beyond personal grief. Rose hymns argue that our aesthetic satisfaction come from work as an achievement rather than display of sincerity. Modernist impersonality, similar to T.S. Eliot in its theory, Warden used the elegy of formal ritual. For poems, power lies in the rhetorical distance. It is a performance of mourning that honors of action of writings, risk of failure. Warden task ultimately modern is risk. Memorializing as a giant, while attempting a find of voice that distinct not Estians. Intertextual genealogist Etzian Ghost, formal manuscript section 3 utilize Trosen paramotor couples. Metal Cruz cause links directly to its underband bull bands and in memory of Alfred Pollack's fans. Anxiety of influence, od- audience status, trial of its acknowledging jinx, his silliness and psychological delays. The demonstrative of romantic myth of the poet prophet. The gift of language, ultimately audience pardons at of political because he was the master of his English tones, suggesting the craft out life ideology. And then frozen landscape of oven connection, a landscape or connection that reflect audience poetry in memory, that reflect social um, emotional coldness and isolation and spiritual emptiness. They are reflect of a frozen landscape uh, in a memory by audience. The similarity of cold, Joseph Cohen identify a coldness in a modern memories of the war poetry of Wilfred Owens. The frozen and shuddering at post awoke the prayer state of pre-war Europe. The continuity of pity, audience dropped on pity of war, but spiritual it is sentimentally turning it into a clinical observation of the dynamic civilization, a universal elegy by using oven winter metaphors, modern elements adds death of private loss and global winter of human spirits. Then generic subversion, dual elegy. Audience poems on, we can find out dual elegies. First, personal elegies and universal elegies. Poems called dual elegies that because it's combined intellectual loss and borders of psychological reflection. They are reflect on modern poems. Synthesis of loss. Rose hints not that audience deliberately set himself a formidable uh, undertaking of writing elegies for both a poet and nations. Metaphor of cities. Section 1 described that its body is a city wall was progressing a revolution and square were quite empty. This privilege sees of Barcelona conflicting a biological depth and political collapse. Blurring of boundaries. The poem break of genres of individual elegies because to become a request for Western liberatory traditions. Then paradox of arts, action versus language. Doctrine of neutrality. A famous line, poetry make nothing happen, is a often misunderstood. Auden is not saying poetry is useless. He is saying it autonomous. And value of making, a poetry exists in a space untouchable by executive governors and happening, is internal of linguistics, the worship of language. Time is a tyrant over beauty and virtue, but it worship language because language is one of vessel that carries of human voice across the nightmare of history. There are my brief image. They reflect of powerless action and powerful language. Then discard of poem, uh, rejection of lives. The audience poem on laboratory of modernism and historical honesty. They are reflect of September 1, 1939. Okay, synthesis of foundation. Healing foundation. He was the representative of human emotion and feelings and loss of that. That's my we can find in these images. And then secular players. Final section shift from clinical observation and spell like orders. The poet is argued that start the healing foundation in the desert of hills and FM flames and resolution. That's we can find. Conclusion: W.S. Auden is a 1939 elegies transform a traditional elegy into a modern experiment, responding a fractured historical movements marked by war and ideological collapse by emerged influence W.B. Yeats and Wilfred Owen. Audience create a poetic space where personal loss become universal crisis and civilizations. And the paradox, poetry make nothing happen. That was previous line. and reveal a poetry power of lies is not a political action, but it is the ability to operate human consciousness and voice. And ultimately, the Elysis Act laboratories of modernism, proving that in time, crisis, poetry sustain meanings of thought, language, memories, and individual experience express. There are briefly embed of infographics. They are reflect my all over presentation, and there are references. Thank you. If you have a question, you can ask me. Okay, thank you for question. 1939 is a important for because it is a market by marked of times for war and crisis, and including death of yeah, Wardens, AIDS, and starting of World War Second. Another.
Hello, Jaipal. So my question is, what does Oden mean by poetry makes nothing happen?
Okay, thank you for question. Uh, Audience means poetry does not change directly change, because because poetry kept some elements like human thoughts and feeling alive, like we can find out in find out in presentation the human thoughts and feelings alive in the poem. So that's reason poetry poetry does not making nothing happen. Okay, so that's all.
Hello. Good afternoon. Today, my name is Ziral Bajareja. Today, I'm present the topic about dystopian power structure and the politics control of control, a study of 1984 and Leila. These are my academic information. These are my table of contents. My research question is that to what extent does the transition from Orwell's psychological surveillance to Akbar's ecological and data-driven governance represent a shift in the politics of control within the dystopian genre? My hypothesis is that while Orwell's Oceania internalization of states gas to produce docile bodies, Akbar's Leila demonstrates a material ecology of control, where power is enacted through the physical segregation of species and the weaponization of environmental scarcity. My introduction: dystopian literature represent speculative societies marked by authoritarian control, social oppressions, and the erosion of individual autonomy. It serves as a critical lens to examine the potential consequences of political extremism, technological surveillance, and ideological domination. Uh, it highlights the tension between conformity and resistance in oppressive socio-political system. Ultimately, the presentation aims to critical evaluate how dystopian text reveals the dynamics of power and the fragility of human agency. contextualizing dystopian literature, etymological root from Greek dice and root topos. It represents the inverse of utopia, a society defined by systematic misery and the total loss of individual autonomy. The cautionary mirror, speculative magnification. These texts function as mirrors that exaggerate contemporary anxieties to their logical, terrifying extremes. Intertwined dangerous reflects the lethal interaction of technology control and state sanction violence, socio-political function, panoptic discipline, illustrate how regimes use constant observation to produce docile bodies that self-regulate. Author background: George Orwell, imperial critic. His service in the Burmese imperial police foster a lifelong hatred of state-sponsored oppression and the machinery of exploitation. Literary mission define his work as a direct struggle against totalitarianism and the manipulation of objective truth. Prayag Akbar was a journalistic foundation, a former editor for Scroll. In his fiction is rooted contemporary South Asian data, urban segregation, and the rise of digital ID system. Theoretical framework. Focal panoptism, the intellectualized gaze, concept of power that visible but unverifiable, forcing subject to self-regulate. Application is that the telescreen in 1984 acts as a permanent psychological monitor, creating docile bodies. Social reproduction theory, domestic control, concept of power sustained by regulating the labor of care. Totalitarian absurdity, the limits of power. Concept is that the paradox where extreme state rigidity becomes irrational and fails. A represent of authoritarian regimes, the Party of Oceania, the ideological monolith. Structure is a rigid hierarchy that demands total psychological submission. Messianism operates through active love for Big Brother, aiming to replace private emotion with state-directed hysteria. In the council week in Leila, the technocratic segregation structure regimes of delirious governance that manage people via data, digital IDs, and governance by numbers. Comparative insight, Oceania controls through the mind, and the council controls through the body. Mechanism of surveillance and discipline. Oceania, the telescreen, a two-way electronic eye that creates a panoptic life where the possibility of being watched induces permanent self-discipline. In council sector, technocratic and statistical control, governance by numbers, shift from thought control to delirious governance, managing citizens as data points via digital IDs and algorithms. Ideology, hegemony, and social conditioning. Newspeak mechanism systematically shrinking vocabulary to make unorthodox thought unthinkable. The purity myth and social hygiene. Mechanism in framing segregation as a hygiene and moral to maintain the council's order. Manufacturing the order. Oceania directs collective collective hatred towards the brotherhood, or proles the unifying the party through shared enmity, construction of identity and loss of freedom, the death of individual, digital subject, Leila governance by numbers, biometric eraser, gender body and social hierarchy, social reproductive labor, a weaponized motherhood. In Leila, the council controls Shalini by seizing by her daughter, turning maternal care into a site of political punishment. The body as a site of controls in 1984. The body as a 1984. The body as a torture. Uh, Comparative analysis, convergence, the panoptic life in mechanism, internalization, divergence, comparative synthesis, contemporary relevance, the smart city dystopia, climate change and ecological authoritarianism. These are my detailed infographic of the presentation. The study demonstrates that dystopian literature effectively illustrates the mechanism through which power, surveillance, and ideological control shape and constrain human behavior. These are my learning outcome. Understand what dystopian literature is and why it matters. These are my references. Thank you. If you have any question, please ask me.
Hello, Hiral. So my question is, how do surveillance methods differ in 1984 and Lela?
In 1984, surveillance is psychological because when we read the novel, a Big Brother always in telescreen watching the people, personal life, and people are live in fear. While in Leila, it is a physical and technological. It showed data, IDs, walls, and segregation. And any other?
So, Hiralba, my question is how do those texts show control over mind versus body?
1984 controls the mind through the language and propaganda. In Leila, controls the body through space, rules, and social division. That's it. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, myself Divya Dabe, and today's my topic is From Fate to Absurdity, a comparative study of Oedipus, Hamlet, and Waiting for Godot. This is my academic and presentation details. So my research question is, how does Western drama change from fate to controlling human life in Oedipus Rex, to inner confusion in Hamlet, and finally to meaninglessness in Waiting for Godot? What does this changes tell us about how ideas of human meaning and control develop over time? Hypothesis: this study argued that Western drama moves from belief in fate to belief in fate and cosmic order to doubt and inner conflict, and finally to complete uncertainty and absurdity. Oedipus Rex shows human control controlled by fate. Hamlet shows confusion and moral doubt, and Waiting for Godot shows a world without clear meaning or resolution. Events or drama continues to reflect basic human fears and questions, showing that these concerns remain important even when meaning is disappear. This is table of content. Introduction. This slide includes some introduce the main idea of classical drama believes in order and fate. Modern drama shows uncertainty and absence. Oedipus follow fate. Hamlet doubts action, and Waiting for Godot show endless waiting. Rationale of the study: historical shift in dramatic consciousness. Western drama shows how idea of about human choice and responsibility have changed over time. In classical tragedy, life is controlled by gods and fixed cosmic order. Human actions matter because they follow a fate and that is already decided. In Shakespeare drama, characters think deeply and struggle with moral choices. Conceptual and critical framework of the study. The study uses idea from post-structuralist, existential, and archetypal theories to understand drama. In classical tragedy, meaning is often absent or delayed, not directly clear. The absurdity is understood as a dramatic condition, not a theme. Shakespeare can be seen as an early or a proto-absurd dramatist because his character faced confusion and uncertainty. Classical tragedy and concept of fate. In the classical Greek tragedy, fate operates on overreaching metaphysical force governing human action and destiny. Classical tragedy does not question the existence of fate but focuses on human responses to it inevitability. Language, prophecy, and different meaning. Although Oedipus Rex appear to affirm absolute fate, modern criticism reveals instability beneath this structure. Meaning is continually differed throughout language, prophecy, and interpretation rather than clearly revealed. Knowledge arrives too late to enable action, exposing the fragility of certainty within a fate-driven universe. From fate to inner thought, inner doubt, the psychological architecture of tragedy. Here is the line: the concise does make cowards of us all. The time is out of joint. This line is taken from Hamlet. That is meaning action is delayed by reflection, memory, and ethical doubt, marking the breakdown of absolute certainty. Time, memory, and fragmented identity in Shakespeare. The past continually introduced into in the present, distributing in a linear progression and forward action. Hamlet's identity is shaped by remembrance, grief, and reflection instead of deceive behavior. A new dramatic logic, the absurd. In the absurd, we can see that the absurd drama, the plot is always uncertain. Absurd theater rejects the idea that existence is rational and intelligible or purposeful. Language fails to convey stable meaning and instead reveals emptiness. Absurd drama presents conflict as a permanent, marking a radical break from tragic order. Waiting for Godot and the collapse of meaning. Waiting for Godot present existence as a endless waiting without fulfillment. Vladimir and Estragon wait for Godot, whose arrival and purpose are never clarified. Time becomes circular, actions lead nowhere, and memory is unreliable. Unlike Oedipus Rex or Hamlet, or or a future. Dramatic character from hero to archetype. Dramatic character retain archetypal significance despite major changes in dramatic form as a psychological depth diminish symbolic and archetypal resonance increase. This table compare all three drama, how Oedipus Rex is move from fate to in Hamlet to doubt and the end of the waiting for Godot in from to absurdity. Conclusion: the shift from fate to absurdity shows how idea of tragedy and human life have changed. Classical drama found meaning in accepting order, while modern drama faces a world where meaning is missing. Events or drama continues because humans still search for understanding. Theater does not solve life's questions but helps express them. This study shows that drama grows with a philosophy and remains a powerful way to explore the human condition. This is my learning outcome and references. Thank you. If anyone have question,
Hello, Divya. My question is, why is the Hamlet considered a bridge between those plays?
because Hamlet is still in the world of king and order, uh, and his mind is full of absurdity, doubt. This leads to a modern way of thinking. Any other one?
Hello, Divya. My question is, why do we still watch this plays if the modern ones say life has no meaning?
Even when meaning is missing, but still this play help us to express our inner fear and our shared human conditions. Thank you. That's it from my side.
સ્લાઇડ શો કેમ નથી બતાવતો સ્લાઇડ શો નથી બતાવતો સ્લાઇડ શો બતાવતા નથી. Hello everyone, myself Dimple Parmar and my today's topic is selfhood, language, double think and ideological control in George Orwell 1984, exploring identity, reality and dystopian politics. And this is my academic information and this is a table of contents, and my research question is how do linguistic manipulation, psychological conditioning through double think and panoptic surveillance function as an interconnected mechanism of ideological control in 1984, and how do they contribute to systematic erosion of individual selfhood and objective reality. In hypothesis is the party's strategic use of linguistic reduction, cognitive distortion and internalized surveillance operates as a unified system of power that not only suppress dissent but fundamentally restrict human consciousness, leading to the dissolution of autonomous selfhood and the replacement of objective reality with ideological construct truth. And then introduction to Orwellian dystopia. 1984 portrays a terrifying dystopian world ruled by a totalitarian regime where truth is not objective but politically manufactured. Reality itself is shaped, altered, and controlled by those in power.
The party, led by the symbolic figure of Big Brother, exercised complete authority over both external behavior and internal thought, leaving no space for personal freedom or independent thinking. Individual identity and selfhood are gradually erased through constant surveillance, fear, and psychological manipulation, ensuring that citizens remain obedient and inescapable of rebellion. Mechanisms just as propaganda, censorship, and language control are used to limit expression and reshape perception, making resistance almost impossible. And then concept of selfhood. Winston act of writing a diary is not just rebellion but an act of identity formation. The use of language is an act of self-creation. The central conflict of 1984 is the struggle between individual selfhood and the oppressive force to totalitarian power. Memory, dreams, and fragment of history become an essential tool through which Winston attempts to perceive his identity. The party control over language and history threatened to destroy the connection between selfhood and objective reality. Doublethink represents the ultimate psychological control, where the mind is forced to accept contradiction and surrender in independence. And then language as a tool of power. In 1984, language became a powerful political weapon used by the party to control not only communication but also thought itself. The creation of newspeak is central to his control, and it is deliberately removes vocabulary to restrict the range of ideas individual can express or even imagine. By reducing the number of words, especially those related to freedom, individuality, and rebellion, the party gradually eliminates the possibility of critical thinking. As argued by Lillian Feder, linguistic restriction prevent the formation of dissent, making the rebellion not just dangerous but literally unthinkable. And then epistemology of doublethink. Psychological sabotage. Doublethink is a more than a lie. It is the mental gymnastic of holding two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. Doublethink is a form of self-deception, which the self-deceptive person is both victim and the perpetrator of the deception. The freedom trap. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 make 4. Then doublethink is the tool that makes the individual willingly surrender their own logic to collective. And then the liberalism of fear in political theory. 1984 is approach with the skepticism as a literal political model. The text raises question about applicability to real-world authoritarian regimes. Orwell vision is not a possible society but of a psychological hell. It is a study of victim, not the victor. Empathize on O'Brien metaphysical authority, risk obscuring the mundane, bureaucratic functioning of actual authoritarian system. The novel is thus reframed as a phenomenology of despair rather than a straightforward political warning. And then surveillance and the panoptic state. The party enforced absolute control through constant surveillance using telescreen, microphones, and the thought police. Citizens internalize the surveillance, regulating their own thoughts and action even when one is not physically present. The fear of being watched all times creates self-discipline and eliminates the possibility of rebellion. And then the prole myths and social stratification. Winston believes if there is hope, it lies in the proles. But Shuckler challenged this romantic notion. The proles are not revolutionary, but the human waste product of the system, left in a state of primitive liberty only because they are politically irrelevant. The party power is so absolute. It is allow 85% of the population freedom, growing the language, education, and organization to rebel. The proles represent a natural state that party has suppressed. They survive only a relic or historical human life. This highlights how social stratification under totalitarian control makes mass freedom irrelevant to maintenance of absolute authority. And then solipsism and the glass paperweight. This focus on the examine how Orwell depicts the destruction of objective reality. The glass paperweight symbolizes Winston's effort to preserve a fragment of the past. The smashing of the paperweight is the smashing of the external world. Once the physical evidence of history is gone, the mind has no choice but to accept the party solipsism. This moment shows the negative utopia reaching its total form. No outside words exist, only the party internal logic. O'Brien tells Winston that the start and merely beats or fire a few kilometers away, demonstrating that reality exists only in the mind and the party controls that mind. And the Goldstein paradox and control dissent. These focus on the party fabricate an enemy of the people to maintain total control. dissent it orchestrated, not eliminated, to strengthen the party authority. The negative utopia requires a perpetual antagonist. Goldstein is a structural necessity. Rebellion itself is a scripted, rendering resistance meaningless. The party monitor all dissent to detect and the suppress potential threat. The Goldstein paradox reveals that opposition exists only to reinforce and party dominance. And the metaphysics of O-brain power. O-brain demonstrates the party power extends beyond society in the laws of nature itself. By controlling human perception, the party has that authority over reality itself. Doublethink enables a collective solipsism where the party not only rules the state but shapes the universe. The represent of ultimate stage of negative utopia, where domination over reality emphasizes human insignificance. Orwell writes, "We control matter because we control the mind." Reality inside the school, showing that truth exists only where the party allows it. And the biological sees hunger and hysteria. The party uses deprivation as a tool to control both mind and body. Constant hunger and the large taste of victory gain keep individual focus on survival and not thought. Shuckler argues the mundane cruelty, like controlling food and comfort, prevents people from thinking freely. And big brother considered as a totem. Big brother function as a psychological and symbolic anchor of the party control. His existence is immaterial. He operates as a locus of fear, love, and reverence. The negative utopia big brother abstract the permanence of the state, transferring the collective we into a transcend into identity, subletting the individual I. And this is the conclusion. 1984 shows how language, doublethink, and surveillance destroy individual identity and freedom. The party controlled not only action but also thought, making rebellion impossible. Ultimately, Orwell warns that controlling the mind is the most powerful form of domination. And this is a whole infographic of my presentation. And this is my learning outcome. I can critically analyze how language function as a tool of ideological control. I can interpret the concept of doublethink and its role in shaping distorted reality. And this is all references. Thank you. If you have any question, please ask.
Hello, Dimple. My question is, why not people rebel against the party?
People rebel not against the party because the party also control their action, thought, and through the newspeak, the party not give to freedom to people for the thinking. And the double thing, also people follow the and believes in the also party, and the constant surveillance is also fear of the watching continuous, and this way the party not thinking rebellious. Any other?
Dimple, my question is, how does the party control the body?
Party control the body in the way party also keeping the people hungry, tired, and uncomfortable. So people mind also become stressful and uncomfortable. So party this way control the body, and people not thinking freely and independently. Thank you.
So, hello everyone, myself Dimple Dabi, and today is, I am dealing with the topic the truth and language manipulation in 1984. Here is my academic information. This is research question. How do language manipulation, psychological control, political reinterpretation, and memory shape of the construction of perception and of the truth in 1984? Then the hypothesis: the manipulation of language by these in power, transform, and leads into accepted truth and total control over reality and eroding of industrial identity. Then here is table of content. Then introduction. 1984 remains a central text for understanding of manipulation of truth and the abuse of power, and stand as the disturbing yet a powerful reflection of the trauma of World War II. The rise of 20th century totalitarian regimes and the presentation explore the novel structure, its relevance in the modern political contrast and its historical perspective. Then fragmented reality. Dystopian fiction function as a mirror and enclosed universe strategy. Readers identify with the rebel who's the possessive of factory and others lack. Then combining literary analysis with political science and historical reports. Then narrative construction of Orwell's felt and his terminal illness and up the novel. Then the narrative constant of silent still and the fragments of the overhead conservation. Then central failed text. The novel springs from Winston's object failure of the dairy of craftlet and artifact present with the respect by Orwell. Then newspeak and politics of language from Orwell to the age of social media. Newspeak limit the range of the thought by elimination words. If you word for freedom is a gone and a concept is die. Then modern parallel the use of limited characters, platforms, and mirror this simplified political discourse and unfiled the slons. Then branding of beasts. The rebranding of viruses or events to foster its direct application of newspeak. Then psychology of power, domination, and control, and erase of emotion. The psychology of power. The object of power is the O'Brien clarified that power is not means to an end; it is the end itself. Then abolishing feeling. To identify with power, one must be possessed of love, friendship, laughter, and curiosity. When power consume the self, the ring, and the ministry of love. The ring versus ministry of love. Both authors see power as something that eats away in personality from the inside. Winston's selection, where the industrial and the surrender the self to escape and pain of identity. Then fraud of failure. The fraud of failure is connect to the ring. Then that is industrial and always defected by absolute power. Then modernity in the mythics past and political hygienic of Orwell. Industrial and organization represent model power of the organization in the contrast with the postal idea of the Winston's golden century. Then industrial evil is a attempt to freeze history at a moment of total control, and the reputation of Orwell's dies and committed the supported of Labour Party. Then irony, his expose of the secret policy state become a weapon for the US and British secret state. The sponsored translate of 1984 into over 13 language as a Cold War propaganda. Then show trials and double think, a summary of the intersection that intellectually like James Klugman used the evidence and justify. Then 1952 Prague trials in the were sentenced to the death. Then double thinking in knowing it is a confusion and was the manufacturing, but prompting it is a truth. Then synthesis of perspective. Schlesinger, a modern political danger of alternative facts. Then Crick, the structure important of memory and objective evidence. Here is the psychological margin with the power and destroy the industrial invisible than hope that history irony of the socialist warming the being use of imperial propaganda. Then conclusion. Truth is inherent, sustained not by its own strength, by the collection, agreement, language, and of the history. Then illustrate in the 1984 when these foundational are undermined, truth become the subject and political control. Then Orwell warning the deeply relevant and the greatest danger is to not external manipulation but it is human capacity and accept it a critical thought. Here is my references. Here is my learning outcome. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please ask me.
So, Dimple, my question is what is the central idea of 1984?
Okay. The novel show how truth can be controlled and manipulated by poem, thought, language, propaganda, and that is the psychological control. Anyone?
Dimple, my question to you: how is modern politics compared to 1984?
Okay. Modern concept like alternative facts and fake news then reflect on idea of the double think and the manipulation of the truth. So thank you. This is from my side.
Hello everyone, myself Chetna Bhalia. Today I'm going to present on recursive status and the algorithmic absurd, a post-structuralist analysis of the linguistic entropy and the digital loops in the brackets waiting for Godot. This is my academic information as well as presentation information, table of contents. This is the visual infography. My research question is, how does Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot construct a system of recursive status and the linguistic entropy through cyclical temporaling and dialogic repetition? And to what extent can this structure be interpreted to the post-structuralist framework as a proto-algorithmic model that anticipates the contemporary AI-driven and the computational performance system? Hypothesis. This study hypothesized that the Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot operates as a proto-algorithmic system in which recursive status is generated through the repetitions, delay, and the cyclical temporations. Within this structure, linguistic entropy produces the continuous differ of the meaning. And when read through the post-structuralist framework, the play's dramatology reveals formal parallel with the computational loops, iterative processes, and the contemporary AI-driven performance system. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot is the defining work of the modern drama that disrupted the conventional narratives through the repetition, delay, and the absence of the resolutions commonly interpreted with the theater of the absurd. The play foregrounded the existential uncertainty and the breakdown of the meaning. This study repositions Beckett's dramaturgies as the systematic structure in which recursive patterns, cyclical temporality, and the linguistic instability produce the state of the controlled statistic, drawing on the post-structuralist theory.
It is argued that meaning in the play is not fixed but the endlessly deferred. By examining this formal mechanism, the study further suggests that the Beckett's dramatic structure anticipates the logic of the algorithmic loops and the contemporary AI driven system, revealing striking parallels between the absurdist theater and the digital culture. Methodology and the framework. Close textual analysis of the Waiting for Godot, and by the lens of the post-structuralist theory, the Federman, a scholar who said that to discuss or analyze the being of the novel or the play as if they were real, as if they were living in our world, is not is to deal with the work in the term of the sociology and the psychology. It has nothing to do with the aesthetic quality of the work. Key concept of defined like a recursive state is like the without progression, progressive breakdown of the semantic coherence, like in the linguistic anthrophony, repetitive exclusions of the rule-based processing without the resolutions or terminations, generating continuous iterative outcomes in the algorithmic loop. Theater of absurd, defined by the Martin Esslin as a form of drama that reflects the existential dislocations, meaninglessness, and the breakdown of the rational order. Anti-linear narrative progressions, anti-rational and fragmented dialogue, minimal action, and static situation, which is discussed by the Beckett in his work. Human dimensions of the absurd. What the play dramatized like waiting is a condition of suspended action and the anticipation. Uncertainty as a construct state of being, breakdown of the communications between individuals. The process search for the meaning and interferences word. If it bridges the element reflect like Beckett's dramatology anticipates the modern psychological and the digital conditions where individuals experience similarly pattern of waiting, disconnections and systematic repetition. Dramatic structure in the Beckett's. How key structure features in the Beckett's work. Two acts constructed as a near repetition of each other, recursive, static, minimal narrative development and lack of the causal progression. Static spatial setting like tree and road reinforces the immobility. Circular temporary, where time appears to loop rather than the advance. Recursive statistic and the temporal logic of waiting. How human dimensions and the contemporary parallel, like endless waiting, reflect human patience in the contemporary parallel. The digital words, digital waiting in the network like a notifications and message anticipation, desire for the social validations and continuous checking without the resolutions. 24 hours by 7 now people are scrolling down the reels and checking comments, post and liking and dislike. And what is the trending hot topic during this contemporary time? Linguistic entropy and the collapses of the meaning. Linguistic entropy, that comparative study if we waiting for Godot versus the contemporary communications, how dialogues fail to create genuine connections, communications remain unfulfilled. That contemporary failure, like the communications overload and the fragmented discourses erode connections, abundance in the empty in the social media, we can see that. Progressive dissolutions of the meaning, semantic exchange to phatic function, self-canceling meaning. In continuous data flow, like continuously the data is producing by the social media, by the other platform, like the AI content, saturations, erosions of the clear meaning. Speeches become repetitive, circular, increasing detached from the references. In proliferations of the fragmented data, repetitive, the noise, AI echoes crumbled. Post-structuralist framework. How can Derrida's differences concept? Meaning is endless, deferred, and never fully present. He said that there is no particular meaning of particular situation. It is interpreted by the different people through the different perspective. Michel Foucault said that the structure system that shapes the knowledge and the meaning. Foucault said that the knowledge and meaning is depends on how the work structure. If the structure is linear and if structure is there is a traditional and the modern, there is a different between the
the form of the narrations and the structure. So knowledge and meaning is structured by and the system that shapes the knowledge and meaning. If we applied in this, so we are waiting for Godot, like the meaning is perpetuality, deferred and never fulfilled. Dialogues become the self-referential loop, circular without resolutions. Identity and the knowledge remain unstable and the constantly shifting. Antithesis and the fragmentations, how audience experience disorientations and cognitive disruptions, interactive uncertainty and the ambiguity, active engagement in the constructing meaning. Habit, mechanizations, and the repetition. Contemporary time, like algorithmic driven behavior in the digital environments, continuous cycle of the scrolling, clicking, and consuming content. Attention shaped and the directed by the recommendation sites. Humans increasingly functions as the user within the structure system, where behavior is guided, predicted, and repeated, mirror back its mechanized pattern of the existence. Performance loop and the clown logic, human dimensions and the contemporary parallel, like the dialogues assume the fatigue functions, maintaining presence rather than the conveying meaning. And the social media posting and the continuous online engagement. Deferred hope and the experience of waiting. How digital conditions like the climate anxiety and the uncertainty about the future, technological dominations and the lose of control, social fragmentations and disconnections in the modern life. Modern existence mirrors Beckettian absurdity, where hopes persist but remain unresolved, and individuals continues to wait within the system that delay meaning and the fulfillment. This is the bridge between from literature to the computations, like repetition, iteration, cyclical temporations to the loop structure, dialogue loops to code execution cycle, habitual routine to the automated processes. Algorithmic absurdism like AI and Beckettian conditions. Post-human and AI theater. There are also some Chinese articles which I have not mentioned here, but I have read about the AI theater. They are now producing the AI theater and the characters. So they are experimenting lot of the new things on the AI. Counter reading, objections, risk, and responses. How some like the Sharma, who waiting for Godot should be read as a purely existential, not computational. There's a risk also, possibility of the anthropomorphic interpretation, projection, contemporary digital concept onto the mid 20th century text. The absurd in the digital age, like how core structural parallel, like waiting, algorithmic linguistic anthropony, fatigue dialogues, and the absurdity. And conclusion, like how Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot reveals not only the existential crisis but also the set of the systematic human condition, structured through the repetitions, delay, and the instability. Beckett's character emerges as the waiting subject suspended in the perpetual anticipations, cumulative failure with the unstable linguistic system, participant in the recursive structure that resists resolutions. Beckett does not merely depict the human conditions, he models it as a system that early resembles our contemporary digital present. This is my synthesis of my PPT and learning outcome. How I have developed a critical understanding of recursions and static structure, waiting for Godot through the repetition and derivative of action. Inquiry has refined my understanding of how modern network life reproduces the logic of the absurd through cycle of writing, validations, and performative idea. And these are my references which I have used during preparing this presentation. And thank you so much. If anyone have any question?
My question to you, Chetna, how does Beckett use of repetition and cyclical dialogue in Waiting for Godot anticipate modern computational or AI-driven systems?
So in the Waiting for Godot, we know that there is a Estrogan and Vladimir. Their action, the time, the setting, which is looking like the recursive status. There is a only the time is statics, but it is not the progression. There is no progressions of actions. Nowadays, we know that there are some LLM models, means the large language models, which we can provide a large data into that, and it gives us back to it, but for that we have to input, then it is processing and that outputting. So prompting and then processing, and when we get the answer, so it is also the recursive things in AI driven time in the present time. Anyone else?
So, Chetna, in what ways does linguistic entropy in buckets play challenge traditional notion of meaning, and how can post-structuralist theory help us interpret in a breakdown?
So Beckett's play challenge the traditional, like traditional traditional meaning making plays. So here there is a no meaning, but if we so in the post structuralist framework, by the in the concept by the in the concept of the darer by the Darren. So in that he explained that how a particular work is not interpreted by the particular lens. It is differently we can understand and interpret it by our things. And in the Foucault's recursive things, he also said that there is a no the structure is very important, and it also reflect on how the meaning and the structure is connecting each other. So this is from my side. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself Bhargavi Bharat, and today I will be present on narrating power, media, propaganda, memory, reconstructions, and artistic responsibility in Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World. Here is my academic and presentation details. My research question is, how does Kazuo Ishiguro use the unreliable memories of the Masuji Ono, an artist of the floating world, to explore the relationship between the memory, reconstructions, and artistic responsibility in the politic propaganda? So answer is, the novel suggests the memory is not objective record the past, and but narrative reconstruction shaped by ideology, guilt, social pressures, and honest reconstructions shaped by ideology. Art and narrative can function as the instrument that both reinforce of question and political power. Kazuo Ishiguro is memory, identity, moral accountability, and ethical responsibility within the complex historical and socio-political framework. And the novel is situated post World War II Japan, a period marked by cultural reconstruction, reconstructions, social disillusionment, and the evolution of national identity. The narrative unfolds through the recollections of Masuji Ono, former propagandist painter, who confirmed the ambiguities of his past action and their ethical reflections. The collections of individual memory and national history generate the constant narrative, highlighting the instability or truth, the moral complexity and responsibility. Here is research problem, and the slides show the historical context of the World War II, post World War II in the Japan. The 1945 surrounded the introduced American-led democratic reforms and collapse imperial nationalism. The post-war society was forced evaluated the militaristic value and support the wartime efforts. Occupations reform restructure Japanese educations, media, and political in solutions to mirror of democratic and ideas. Artistic responsibility in Ono, the artistic who created the nationalist propaganda, faced intense and public criticism of shifting ethical standards. Ono fragmented recollections reflect the tension between the personal guilt and historical change. Individuals struggle to align their past actions and evolving the political and social climate. The concept of the floating world, the title of an artist's floating world, referred to the Japanese concept of ukiyo, which historical describe the urban pleasure district and artistic culture Edo period Japan. The floating world represents the temporary pleasure, central lifestyle celebrated through the art, theater. Ukiyo prints despite the geish, kabuki actors and city life. Ishiguro represents that concept, the metaphor of the instability and memory identity. The floating quality suggests the memory and personal narrative are fluid, constantly reshaped, especially individual attempts to the justify their past action. Thus, the floating world is symbolized uncertain relationship between the personal memory and historical truths. Uh, Here is infography detailed to explore how Masuji Ono transitions from the celebrated nationalist painter in imperial Japan to the reflective, morally ambiguous figure in the post-war era, and examine how his art served state ideology, how his subsequent narrative attempts to reconcile personal ambitions with historical guilt. Masuji Ono is the artistic ideology. Ono embodies artistic engaged in nationalist propaganda, highlight the intersections art, political ideology. In his career, he created a patriotic artworks supporting the Japan imperial government, and post-war Ono reflect his past, often the minimize his responsibility and attempt to justify his previous action. This transformation illusion is the ethical dilemma artistic whose work and contribute the political propaganda in government. Ishiguro examined how memory, narrative, the ideology interact and shaping both personal and collective history. Then political representation in Ishiguro's fictions. Ishiguro fictions offer to nuisance exploration the relationship between the personal identity and border political structure. As the Das Rotary argue, his novel is really complex interactions between the individual memory and national ideology, while also emphasizing ethics, social and responsibility home by both citizens and artists. Ono comfort the tension between his earlier support for national propaganda and the critical perspective after the war in society. His narrative raises important questions, individual in the constructions dimensions public ideology. Ono's selective memories demonstrate how personal recollections can shape, direct the influence collective and historical understanding. Through the character of Ono, Ishiguro ultimately highlight the intersections personal memory and political discourse, showing the how private and experience both reflect the dominated national narratives. Narrative memory and narrations. Ishiguro, an artist floating world, employs the unreliable narrations to explore the fluidity of memory, historical interpretation. According to words, Ishiguro deliberately construct a unstable narrative perspective to challenge certainty in historical accounts and in continuous between the owner's past action and present recollections. Deliberate the unconscious gaps and distort historical event present in the story. This strategy relieve how memory is not neutral but shaped by psychological, motivational, ideological pressures, emphasizing tension between the personal recollection and historical truth. Jen Walton concept the narratability explore why people construct the share and certain story about their past. Ono selectively narrate event to frame himself positively. His storytelling about allows him to reconcile past action and current ethical standards. The narrative reinforces honor, sense, and self, even the heights, construction, and omniscience. Ishiguro demonstrates that memory and storytelling are not neutral. They are tools for shaping perceptions both for the own self and society. Fragmentation, the unreliable narrative are not broken story. They are the intention for the reader and the participant in constructing meaning. As the Ramiz Ahmad Bhatt drew the attention to the striking parallels between the Ishiguro deceptions and artistic propaganda and artist of the floating world and the operations modern media system. Similarly, contemporary media often construct the ideological narrative, the frame political events, guide public and opinion, the reinterpret historical or social relativity. This comparison underscores the border culture and ethical implications storytelling, showing that whether through the art, modern media narrative have the power to influence moral judgment, historical understanding, and political discourse. Media narrative propaganda. Contemporary media narratives Godi media today. The term of lapdog media refer to the media perceived as the closely allied with the political, often government narrative, while minimize the critical reporting. Here is my literature review. Learning outcome. I understand the relationship between the memory, narrative, reconstruction, historical truth in an artist floating world. Analyze the role of Masuji Ono, an artist involved in the narrative propaganda. Examine how ethical responsibility artists within the political system. Critically interpret how narrative storytelling shape the collective memory and ideological discourse modern society. Here is conclusion. This study demonstrates the artist plotting world, illustrate how historical understanding is shaped through the narrative reconstruct and subjective memory. Ishiguro presents the memory not as stable record but past, but as the selective interpret process influenced by personal and justification and psychological negotiations. Here is reference which I use in this presentation. Thank you. If anyone question.
So, Bhargavi, my question is, why does Masuji Ono use unreliable narration and what does it reveal about historical truth?
Ono changed reduce his mistake and guilt in the past. It shows the memory is not full of truth 100%, but shaped by emotional feelings and society culture. As the William Faulkner said, the past is never dead. It's not even the past.
So, Bhargavi, how does the presentation link Ishaguru's post-war novel to contemporary political systems?
It compared to wartime in propaganda in today time also the how to modern media and lapdog media to manipulate the public and society. As the George Orwell said, the political language is designed to make lies sound truthful, the murder is respectable. Thank you. This is from my side.
So, hello everyone. My name is Aditya Raj Gohil, and on the second day of our presentation, my topic is waiting and the finding meaning in waiting for Godot and the rhinoceros. The absurd condition, existential crisis, and the search for meaning in Beckett's Waiting for Godot and the Ino's case, rhinoceros. my presentation details and the academic details. This is the table of content. My research question is, how do the physical stagnation in the waiting for Godot and the physical transformation in the rhinoceros serves as a metaphor for the character's failure or success in the exercising their existential freedom. My hypothesis is the endless waiting by Vladimir and Estragon symbolizes a surrender to the fear of absolute freedom, whereas Berenger's refusal to conform demonstrates the existential belief that human must bravely choose their action to create their own meaning. Introduction. After World War II, many writers felt that life was confusing and lacked clear meaning. Two famous plays from this time, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot and Eugene Ionesco's Rhinoceros, explore the idea but shows very different ways people react to it. In It argues that the endless waiting in Godot represent giving up on freedom out of fear. In contrast, Berenger's refusal to become a rhinoceros shows the brave choice to resist the crowd and create his own meaning in confusing world. Two big ideas: absurdism versus existentialism. So I have to ask a question that if you were told right now that life has no pre-written script or set destiny, would that make you feel totally terrified or completely free? So two big ideas: absurdism and versus existentialism. Absurdism is the idea that humans desperately want to find meaning, but the universe simply does not care. Absurdist story shows the life as a chaotic where human actions often seem totally useless. In the picture, you can see that there is a picture of a myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, that Sisyphus is rolling a boulder up to the hill, and the bowler will roll back down again, and he has to do it again and again every day. This is the absurdity of that essay. And on other side, the existentialism agrees that the life has no built-in purpose, but it offers a positive way out. It says we have the absolute freedom and the heavy responsibility to create our own meaning. That existentialism give us a freedom to create our own meaning by doing things by ourselves and creating our own meaning by ourselves. The trap of doing nothing in Waiting for Godot. The main characters, Vladimir and Estragon, are stuck in a never-ending cycle of waiting. They are waiting for mysterious figure named Godot, who never arrives or show up throughout the play. Here is the dialogue from Waiting for Godot, that we are waiting for Godot. It's said by Vladimir that they are continuously waiting, but there is no result of their waiting. They are doing continuously one thing, waiting and asking the people about the boy, that when will Godot will come, and there are no result of it. They actually have the freedom to make choice and live, but this freedom scares them into doing nothing. Like they have the freedom to leave that place and do something else. In the starting, they ask the question that what we are doing, that Vladimir says that we are waiting for Godot, and they are continuously doing that throughout the play without doing anything. Question on Waiting for Godot: have you ever found yourself endlessly waiting for something, a perfect moment, a lucky break, or something else to fix your problems, only to realize that while you were waiting, life was just passing you by? This perfectly introduces Vladimir and Estragon, who are trapped in an endless cycle of waiting for an eternal source to give their life a meaning. Question on Rhinoceros: have you ever gone along with a crowd, agreeing to something you secretly thought was ridiculous just because the pressure to fit in was simply too strong to fight? This connect directly to the townspeople in Ionesco's play, who abandon their individuality because the desire to conform become overwhelming. The pressure to blend in rhinoceros. Here in the left side, you can see the rhinoceros. The play happened in a town where the people literally starting turning into the rhinoceros. The weird disease is a symbol for what happened when people blindly follow the crowd to fit in. As people transform into animal, they completely lose their ability to think clearly, to use reason. The rhinoceros destroy everything in their path, showing how dangerous and violent a mob mentality can be. Like here we can see the crowd or the mob mentality, that while we are in a group, we are able to do anything and we can oppose anything, and we are when we are in the crowd, we are manipulated by other, like Osho. Rajneesh Osho said in one interview that while the Babri Masjid was demolished, that he says that just think about it, if one person is there, did he think about demolishing that masjid? No, because there is a group, there is a mob, the Babri Masjid was demolished. That is the reason of demolishing the Babri Masjid. That mob encourages others to do good or bad things. Here is the one dialogue by said by Daisy. What he said: "We must move with the time." Those were his last human words. Here, the one person from the rhinoceros play is turned into the rhinoceros. It said that he was turned into a rhinoceros, but time passes and we have to change ourselves. It is shown in this dialogue. What words fail and trick us? Throughout the play, characters struggle to actually understand each other. Their conversations are often full of misunderstanding and repetitive nonsense. This is the one of the element or characteristic of absurd play and existential play. That there are the dialogues which are not relevant or meaningless. Here is the one dialogue from Rhinoceros, that everything is logical to understand is to justify. Berenger Spy, he is the protagonist, you can say, of this play. That Berenger start out as a messy, disorganized guy that nobody takes very seriously. Berenger is a disorganized person, like we can say a rover that nobody trust him or like to stay with him. But in the last, he is the one who is the best and the most intellectual person in that play. The big takeaway: to wait or to fight. Both plays use absurd situation to challenge us to too closely at our own lives. Waiting for Godot wants us to waste our existence passively waiting for outside help. This is the infographic of my presentation. This is the conclusion. A comparative analysis of both play affirm that the characters' physical state act as a powerful metaphor for the existential agency. Vladimir and Astrogon's perpetual paralysis in waiting for Godot reveals the tragic consequences of surrendering to the anxiety of absolute freedom as the passive waste their lives waiting for an external savior that never arrives. On other side, Berenger actively resistance to the rhinoceros transformation sweeping his town highlights the triumphs of existential responsibility. Ultimately, while Beckett illustrates the despair of choosing inaction, Ionescu provide a model to authentic living, demonstrating the true human in the preserved only when the individual bravely forge their own path and create their own meaning in the otherwise absurd world. My learning outcome, thank you. My learning outcomes are that I have learned to how to cite a book properly, because I don't know, and I have cited a book without any publication date or publication house name. So I have learned from this, and I have learned to compare the American or any play to the Indian topic. Here is my references. Thank you. If anyone have questions.
So, Aditya, my question: in today time world of viral algorithm and social media echoes chambers, how often we unknowingly turn into retrocross just to avoid discomfort of standing alone?
Thank you, Bharagavi, for your question. As I mentioned that one time Osho said in their interview that because of the mob they demolished the Babri Masjid. It is the reason because the people are afraid to being alone. Like and in today's era it is too convenient, or you can say it is too easy to manipulate anyone by the use of social media. We can manipulate it by social media. The theories can be spread because of social media, and the social media pressurize us to don't stay alone and be a part of a group. Thank you.
So my question is, if we are stuck waiting for our own Godot, like the perfect moment, the ideal job, or a stroke of luck, what parts of our actual lives are we passively letting slip away right now?
So we are letting go our freedom to create our own meaning, or our own ability to observe, question, and conclude. We have the ability to observe, question, and to conclude, or to make decision by our own self. While we are waiting for somebody else to create a meaning, generate a meaning for us, we are giving our opportunity, our freedom to him to create our own meaning. And because of that, we lost our freedom because of that. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the last one for this morning session. And if you overview the things, by and large, voice is going. Hello, I hope it is reaching. No? Voice. Hello. Yes. So by and large, topics are quite well selected, presented well. Infographics were also appropriately presented. Textual content also was good. A few of you needs to work on. Riddhi, Jaipal, Dimple Dabi, Divya Dabi. I think Kushi, in your presentation, you referred to mouse, mice. Mice is itself a plural of mouse. It's not mices. And rat is the right word. The novel deals with rat, not mouse. So whatever the novel is trying to tell, that we have to be faithful to the vocabulary and the words used in that. In Hiral presentation, have you seen or read Layla? Have you seen or read it, or? It is a web series also. Because from your answers of presentation, it seems that you are still lacking the core understanding of what actually it is. So if you have seen or have you read the original text, then your explanation is more convincing. You can give it with a better example. Otherwise, it only comes with general words only. The same repeatedly general terms keep on coming when you see that. So in a way, it was good. All did well. Yesterday, I asked you to verify your presentation from AI, whether it is up to the mark. Because still, in many of the presentations, your research questions and hypotheses are not properly explained at the end. Your conclusion is something different than what you started with. So that you need to verify. So yesterday, I told you that if you, after completing your PPT, give to any generative AI and ask a prompt that as a strict reviewer, review this presentation and suggest me what is problem with this PPT. What is the problem with this PPT? Whether the flow of idea from research question, hypothesis to conclusion is proper or it is breaking somewhere. Shall I add something inside or not? So critically engage with AI and see what suggestions you are getting, and then you can incorporate those things there. Gestor still very few are using. Gestor many are using, but Honors is used by very few students. So it is good that Gestor and other quality journals are used, but at the same time move towards Honors also. Explore that also during these days, because after this you won't be able to work on the Honors platform. We want to see that during presentation season you have maximum footprints on honest platform. So if you explore, then you will be able to have your footprints, and a quality journals you will be able to aware about, and good articles where they are published, how does they look, that also you will get an awareness. Today you might not be aware that what is the purpose of this or that, but maybe in future when you will go for dissertation writing in 4th semester or for PhD, then there will be a different kind of hunger, that where is quality journal, where is quality article, how it is known. Then if these things are there in the subconscious mind, it will help you to know. So today you might be not be that hungry as you will be in 4th semester, or then when you prepare for PhD also. So if something you are aware about, you can explore those things also. After completing your masters, you won't be able to access honors because you will have to have institutional access only. So then you can ask your juniors to access and give you some articles when you prepare for your research proposals or other things also. So, but if you know where it is, how to get it, then you can get. This is a practice time. These 5 days are the practice time to explore the quality things. Okay, so with this we end today's session.